All right, let's finish it off one more time. We started out the night talking about residual hauntings, the most common type of, well, I think it's the most common type of haunting. Not a conscious haunting, but a replay of an event that can be anything from positive to really, really scary and creepy. And then onto shadow people, which are only really, really creepy and potentially dangerous. As we're starting to see how that one evolves. And I've been doing a bad job because I've been doing three tonight. This is number three of doing the plugs. So I do want to say if you're into ghost stories and coast to coast and want to share your own, want to get involved in the paranormal community, what'syourghoststory.com is my website, and it's all about building the community and sharing each other's stories. It's all about building up, sharing information. Hopefully, we can learn more all together. And social media, it's where all over. It's What's Your Ghost Story, whether it's Instagram or, well, right here on YouTube, Facebook. And Facebook is a great place where we've been taking polls to figure out what we'll be talking about. So facebook.com/What's Your Ghost Story is where that fun happens. And if you this is the first one you're catching, my name's Scott Marcus. I've been working in the paranormal field as a hobbyist, I'd say more than anything, but I've been doing it, I guess, seriously since 1999. And so, yeah, I've been doing this for more than half my life, learning about different bits of folklore, different bits of culture. And I just really, really enjoy learning and sharing stories. And that's what this is all about. And of course, history is a gigantic part of it. And I guess that's a good segue into what the letter U is going to be tomorrow, as we will be unearthing history. So much of my recent work has involved archaeological work. And it's been such a really rewarding and fun and exciting thing to go out to historically important locations with an archaeologist. One of my best friends, Dan Malone, who is so well versed doing archaeology around the world and learning how to find artifacts, learning how to read the environment and stuff. It's been such a great thing that I'm going to share that a little bit tomorrow as we went to a unique location. Not even actually what's unique is that it was not a unique location. It was a forest preserve in the Chicagoland area, and we ended up finding some stone tools that were at the newest 5,000 years old, but probably older than that. How crazy is that? But it's something it's just it's easy to do, actually, if you know how to look. But you have to have the reverence for history. You have to do the research and all that beforehand. So it's not a how-to video. It's not supposed to be a how-to video, but it is. Hopefully, if people are interested in history and therefore interested in archaeology, and we use this, elements of archaeology when going to haunted locations, when going to haunted woods, looking for the foundations at the gate in Libertyville, that kind of thing. Working with this guy, we're able to locate things. So yeah, it's all about research and the adventure. I think that's something that we all enjoy as paranormal explorers, enthusiasts, ghost hunters. We like to go out there and look into what's the unique thing that's going on in this world that we don't understand yet. And sometimes it's something that we brought on ourselves entirely. And that's why we'll be talking about. We are up to T in this A through Z paranormal alphabet challenge. We're up to the letter T, which is for tulpas. Now, if that's not a term that's familiar to you, the concept of a tulpa is, well, is it possible for us, especially if you're looking at a large society, a large group of people, all thinking about the same thing? Can we bring something into existence? And there's some anecdotal evidence that says, yes, we do. And it's happening. And I'm going to go back. This is actually an ancient concept, an ancient theory. And I'm not going to go into ancient times. I'm going to go into the more modern history. 1972, there was an experiment done in Canada called the Philip experiment, which, by the way, as I was talking about, this is about building the paranormal community. So feel free to comment, write notes off to the side, and I will see them and respond to you. But anyway, the Philip experiment was an idea done, again, up in Toronto, Ontario. It was done at a university, and the test group consisted of Uh, Mensa members. Actually, one of the a former chairperson of Mensa was somebody that was behind it. So this wasn't just a bunch of people that watched the movie The Craft way too often. It was a really serious experiment, and the idea was if we bring a group of test subjects together, just regular people, and I think actually there weren't just randomly chosen people, but they weren't, they weren't psychics, they weren't specialized in manifesting. uh, if we create a fictional character and hold seances and really do everything in our mental power to make contact with this thing that we know doesn't exist, can we possibly still get an answer from who knows where? Can't quite call it the other side, but can we manifest it, something right here? And so they created a character that they called Philip Aylesford. Let's see. They said his backstory, and again, this is a fictional character. Born in 1624 in England, had an early military career, was knighted at the age of 16, involved in the English Civil War, and became personal friends with Charles II, working for him as a spy. Philip was unhappily married to a woman named Dorothea and later fell in love with a gypsy girl who was accused of witchcraft and burned at the stake. So at least they kept it creepy. In despair, Philip committed suicide at the age of 30. So what they did was they sat around a table and they did seance-y type stuff, but nothing happened. Nothing happened for a while. And then they realized that, well, let's try to, maybe it's hard to buy into this. Maybe it's hard to make ourselves believe something that we know is fake. But and maybe part of it is our setting is too sterile. It feels too much like we're just hanging out in a classroom or in a lab setting. So let's make it feel like a seance, make it feel like a real seance. So let's dim the lights down and creep out the environment a little bit. And things began to happen. Now, throughout the experiments, nobody ever saw an apparition, which is, I think, what their hope was, that they were going to be able to actually manifest something in the real world that multiple people could see. That didn't happen. However, what did happen was that they would hear knocking sounds in the room that corresponded to answers, as answers to questions that they were asking. At times, the table that they were sitting at would move on its own, sometimes even standing up just on one leg, sometimes flying across the room, even when people weren't sitting at it, even when no human being was making contact with it. So action was happening. Um, Psychic action seemed to be psychokinetic. That's the word I was looking for and struggling brazenly for. Was actually happening, even though they were making contact with someone who never, ever, ever existed. They tried this a couple times. They had different groups of people come in, and they created different fake characters. One was called Lilith, and another was called Humphrey, and the results were the same. So, did it prove anything? Not exactly. We don't know that we manifested or that they manifested fake characters, but it seemed as though they were able to manifest paranormal phenomena, because these bizarre occurrences were witnessed by multiple people, including physical objects moving by unseen forces. And again, we were not talking Drew Barrymore and the Firestarter. We're not talking about people that claim to have Whoopi Goldbergian psychic ability. But the idea that a room full of people focusing on the same thing, maybe it can lead to something. And this is in probably a pretty small sample size. I don't see how long this experiment went on for, but let's say that they were able to do this in the span of a month or two. Well, what if we have a fictional character that we have a lot of people believing in and actually believing in? These people knew that they were trying to make contact with a fake entity, but what if people legitimately believed in it? Well, it would stand to reason that the result would be even more big, even more amplified. A story that I like to talk about, which is probably not exactly a Tulpa story, but it's close. It's also one of those borderline things. I think Tulpas and residual hauntings there's a lot of gray area there. As I was talking about in my letter R for residual haunting episode just a bit earlier tonight, the idea that a place can hold an emotion, positive or negative emotion, that feels a little bit like a residual haunting to me, where somebody was here or many people were here and they felt positive feelings, and therefore now new people can walk into this place and feel good and they don't know why. that feels like a little bit of a residual haunting where you are leaving an imprint on a space and other people are able to tap into it. Well, I think that happens at haunted places as well, places that might not even actually be haunted, but people go there believing it's haunted, believing that it's a scary place, and then therefore jump ahead after generations of people have been going to this place, scaring themselves. Now it is a scary place. And my personal experience with this is in Fairfax Station, Virginia. I was on a trip, and as I always do, I look up what the local legends are of an area. And I found this incredible, bizarre story about the Bunnyman. And there's actually this one podcast I'm on every so often, and every single time I'm on, they ask me to tell the story about the Bunnyman again because it's so spectacular, it's insane, and actually, it does start from truth. You can find these Washington Post articles because Washington, very near to this area, that talks about this bizarre person, probably a mentally unbalanced person that lived in the woods around Fairfax Station, Virginia, in the late 1960s. Actually, it's oddly, now that I'm thinking about it, it was around the same time as Mothman. So there's all sorts of weird cryptids out there. This guy is borderline cryptid. And he would wear a bunny suit and he would kind of terrorize this small growing suburb area. And when I say bunny suit, I think most people assume the mall Easter bunnies, but no, this guy is just wearing clothes made out of the pelts of bunnies, of rabbits that he killed. And he would do bizarre things. He was seen one time just vandalizing a house that was under construction. Another time that he was seen, there was a couple in a car. I don't know if it was a make a point thing or if just a couple hanging out in a car, and their window shattered, and a hatchet had been thrown in, and this dude in the bunny suit is running up to the car, so they hightail it out of there, high cottontail it out of there, if you will, and of course they go to the police. Reports are filed. Nobody's found. The most disturbing story is one day a guy was out looking for his cat that snuck out of the house, and of course, and this is in Washington Post articles, and probably other smaller local papers as well. But the man did eventually find his cat, but it was in the clutches of the bunny man who was eating the thing. So here we go. We have a real life moment, a couple of real life moments. They're all odd and disconcerting, and we don't know a lot. Like, we don't know who the person was who was never captured, and just the sightings eventually stopped. Nobody ever knew who the Bunny Man was. And actually, as a footnote for all of you cinephiles out there, this is the inspiration for the bunny character in Donnie Darko, which also takes place in Virginia. So that is Frank the Rabbit, his backstory. And but you jump to much later. The stories, they linger. And now people have grown up knowing that these weird things have happened there, and the stories continue that the Bunny Man is still out terrorizing people, that he's abducting kids and then hanging them from this railroad truss, which of course is not true. And eventually the story goes on that there's a manhunt or a bunny hunt out, and they find the person, and the cops are hot on his tail, and they're chasing him up this embankment, and he runs up over the top of this hill onto a train track just at the same moment a train goes by and just blasting him into pieces. And so you think that's the end of the story of the Bunny Man, except that as the train goes away and it gets quiet over this wooded area, we can hear just the woods emanating with the sound of laughter. So the Bunny Man's spirit has lived on, even though his body is in a billion pieces across the front of a freight train. So I was out in Fairfax Station, Virginia, and I'm like, well, I got to check this place out. There are a couple of different locations that claim to be the Bunnyman Bridge. And it's funny when people disagree over which one's the actual Bunnyman Bridge. None of them are the actual Bunnyman Bridge because there was never a bridge as part of his story. But anyway, so I went to one of them with a friend, and we were laughing about it. We were literally laughing about it because it's just such a ridiculous story. This guy in a bunny suit going around terrorizing this suburban neighborhood, and not taking it seriously. I mean, we like to go out and check places out, but we know we aren't going to a haunted location. However, we get to the location, and there was no power on earth that could have gotten this other person that I was with, my partner at the time, out of the car. They were actually terrified, and they knew it was ridiculous to be terrified, but they were borderline in tears. They wanted to go. I'm like, well, we just drove an hour. I was actually getting pissed. I was like, come on, we're here. Let's get some video. Let's walk around. So yeah, you stay in the car. Fine. And I went out and I shot video, and I got to admit, I was a little bit on edge too. I don't know why. The nerves were up a little bit. Um, but I didn't have any paranormal experience. And he would say that she didn't either, because we didn't see a bunny man creature. We didn't hear anything weird. We didn't, I don't know, there was no visual apparition. However, the fact that this feeling was impressed upon her is probably because over the last 40 years, 50 years, generations upon generations of people were coming out to this location with a purpose to scare themselves, to feel like this is a scary place. This is a place where bad things happen. Maybe believing, maybe not believing, but have at least having the idea that perhaps this is where people were executed. Kids our age were hanging from this railroad bridge, and a guy, the wacko psycho in a bunny suit, was killed up here, and his spirit lives on in this area, and they're still frightened by it. Could that impress an area or depress an area in a way to make this mundane, nothing place suddenly scary to even people that don't know about it? I mean, we knew about it. We knew going in, but we went in there with a tongue-in-cheek, we were laughing about it attitude. But can the story itself change a place to the point that maybe eventually, and maybe currently, people are actually seeing a guy in a bunny suit, a scary bunny man? And you can't think about that too long without thinking about the true life story of the Slender Man killings out here, not too far from where I am, about an hour from where I am in Waukesha, Wisconsin, it was a fictionalized story, just like a horror writing contest. It was creepypasta. It was just intended to be a website where you could write fictional horror, which is a great thing. Like, to encourage people to write in general is a great thing, and use your imagination. And in the era of everything, just people staring at cell phone screens, to actually get your brain working and start crafting stories and sentences, it's a fantastic thing. However, people began to because they were also doing some photoshopping as well, and creating these images of a very tall, skinny guy, usually seen around children, and all of this fan fiction grew up around these images, to the point that kids, teenage, young teens and tweens, they began to really believe that that this guy was real, that the Slender Man was some entity, some deity of sorts, and we need to do what it takes to live in his house in the woods, by pleasing him, by appeasing him. And a couple of girls, they thought the way to do it, to show our allegiance, is to kill our friend. And they actually attempted to kill their friend, taking her out into the woods, stabbing her a number of times. Thank goodness somehow she survived, even though she was in very poor medical condition after the attack. But these girls, these perpetrators who were recently sentenced, and this happened a few years ago, but it's still a recent news story because the trial just happened not all that long ago. There's an HBO documentary about it. Of course, there's some fictionalized horror movies about it as well. But the Slender Man case is an interesting one, because these people seem to believe that this thing is real, and if enough people believe, maybe it is. And I would always I would tell the story about Bunnyman Bridge and all that. And I remember, a couple episodes ago, I was talking about paracons for the letter P, and I forgot to give a shout out to the Rockford Paracon, which is it's a smaller one. It's a local one where you got your ghost hunters coming out and sharing the evidence they got. It's also a wonderful one. I had a really, really great time attending it, speaking at it, and I would love to do that again one day. So hopefully that'll be on my list in the near future. But anyway, I was at that conference, and I was talking about Bunnyman Bridge and the idea of being able to manifest something, when a hive mind manifests something, even if you're doing it unintentionally. You're not trying to summon these evil creatures, but But maybe if we all just think about it enough or are enamored with it enough, things happen. And somebody said to me, "It's like, well, then how come people don't see Santa?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, you got me. Yeah, that would be the exact deity, the exact entity that would manifest because all of these kids, millions of kids, uh, believe in Santa, like really believe, excitedly believe in Santa." And there's Max writes Felicity and I have whiskey, Cubs game, chips, and ghost stories. It's a good Tuesday night. Great stories. All right. Thanks for watching. And I look forward to your next Wine Wednesday broadcast as well. If anybody else likes good storytelling and good writing, head over to facebook.com/network ISA. And that's the place to be for some wine and storytelling and Felicity singing like a lunatic. She's wonderful. So anyway, I thought I was busted by the idea that, well, Santa, nobody claims to have seen real life Santa sightings. So, you kids might be overexcited and think something, but they're kids, whatever. And then I was completely blown away more recently to find out that credible people have claimed to have seen Santa and are grappling with the insanity of that. And coast to coast, a toast from Madison to Los Angeles. And so I do want to, in the description of this video, I have links to a couple of episodes from the Other Side, See You on the Other Side podcast, as they cover this topic a couple times. They cover Tulpas 3 different times. They cover Slender Man a couple times, and they do cover these real life Santa sightings. So the idea, and I do like the idea that hauntings can be positive. They don't have to be scary. I talked about at the residual hauntings episode of, having a positive emotion impressed upon you, or I don't know, some other residual hauntings that come from positive places. And there's other types of oppressions that are positive. You call it oppression because an emotion is impressed upon you, despite you not having any rational reason to have that feeling, but it can still be a positive thing. And I do love the story of the aviator who is I guess I'll tell this one quickly, even though it's off topic. In Northern Illinois, in Evanston, Illinois, there was the ghost of a man that was nicknamed Seaweed Charlie. They would call him because they would see a guy drowning out in Lake Michigan. He would eventually go underwater, and then he would reemerge up on the rocky coastline wearing aviator clothes, parachute, the whole deal, and draped with seaweed. And he would walk across Sheridan Road, which is a 4-lane divided road. And so ideally cars stopping or swerving out of the way. And he would get to the gates, the closed gates of Calvary Cemetery, and just pace back and forth, back and forth. And the belief was that he was a guy that died in a training exercise around the time of World War II. There were battleships in Lake Michigan, and they ran exercises of landing and taking off of aircraft carriers out there. And the idea was that this is a guy that did not make it. He didn't pass his training, and which is something that actually did happen. There were people that crashed out there and died, and he was one of them. And so he was buried at sea, and he wanted to be laid to rest. So he was trying to come to the cemetery, but he would always this would happen after dark or around dusk, and you couldn't get in. And then one night, apparently, as the story goes, the groundskeeper forgot to close the front gates, and he was never seen again. So the idea was that he came up and the gates were finally open, and he found his own peace on the other side. So there's a good ghost story. After we talked about shadow people, Max, you may have missed that one. S was for shadow people, so you can feel good that you missed that episode, because that stuff is so creepy. So yeah, that is the idea of tulpas. And I wanted to say too, there is the website WikiHow, which their little slogan is "How to Do Anything," and they actually do have a "How to Create a Tulpa," which is really, I don't know, unnerving. I actually did read it. It's a 14-part step thing, a 14-step process to create your own personal tulpa. And I'm not going to link to it because it's weird. It's like borderline. It seems like borderline magic conjuring in a twisted way, but also it seems like perhaps lonely people giving into delusions. But the idea of tulpas, of being able to create things with your mind that now suddenly exist in the real world is it's a it's a very possible thing. So I will be back again tomorrow. I'll be right back, and yeah, I agree, Max. I'll be back tomorrow. The letter U is what I'm up to, and it'll be unearthing history. We are going to be talking about archaeology, which again isn't super connected to the paranormal, but it started out because I was writing about Robinson Woods Indian Burial Ground, and I met an archaeologist through our mutual interest in that haunted location. He, not from a haunted perspective, but from a historical perspective. And I ended up becoming very close with the Robinson family and doing some really amazing work. So tomorrow night, I'm going to have a very short live broadcast, but I will be uploading an edited video for you all to enjoy that will take us through what it's like to walk through the woods with an archaeologist and finding some very unique artifacts. All right. Thank you, everybody that tuned in all night long. 3 episodes in one night. Really fun to talk about 3 different paranormal types of experiences: residual hauntings, shadow people or shadow figures, and now tulpas. Have a great night, and I'll be talking to you tomorrow.